Welcome to Listen Here, the audiobook podcast where we bring you chapter listens of our much-loved audiobooks and sometimes special guest appearances. This week is National Dance Week, and to celebrate, we're featuring an exclusive preview from Dance Your Dance, 8 Steps to Unleash Your Passion and Live Your Dream by Laurieann Gibson. A-list choreographer Laurieann Gibson guides creators of all kinds to embrace their passions and achieve success, providing a practical roadmap to never giving up on your dream. Have you felt stuck, like you're just running in place, fearful of taking the next step? World-renowned Emmy-nominated choreographer and creative visionary Laurieann Gibson shares personal stories of her 20-plus year career in entertainment, words of encouragement, and practical advice to help you reach your full potential. Gibson candidly opens up about her experiences, challenges, and triumphs, sharing the 8 principles that not only shaped her incredible career, but also guided her work with the world's biggest pop stars. Drawing on her fascinating artistic experiences and the faith that sustained her through her biggest challenges, Laurieann offers a step-by-step guide to living out your vision. Because when it comes to being who God created you to be, it's always your time to shine. The audiobook contains exclusive bonus pep talks from Laurieann. Now, here's an exclusive preview from Dance Your Dance, 8 Steps to Unleash Your Passion and Live Your Dream by Laurieann Gibson.
Step 1. Dare to dream. I wanted to dance. That's all I knew. My mother always said, "You came out wanting to dance." In fact, I'm pretty sure I was dancing before I even came into this world. My mother used to complain about her stretch marks. I didn't have them with Debbie. I didn't have them with Karen. You did this. But now when we look at them, we laugh. She's like, "Laurieann, you left this on my belly because you were dancing." I was choreographing in the womb, I say. I was doing 8 counts of life in there. Both my mom and my older sisters remember me, at a very young age, putting a towel on my head and creating performances while dancing around the house. I apparently learned just from watching TV. Diana Ross and Lola Falana, of whatever Lola wants, Lola gets fame, captivated me, so I would mimic them and just dance and dance. My mom had enrolled both of my older sisters in dance classes before I came along, and both of them rejected it. She vowed she wasn't going to waste her money on classes anymore. But when I was 5 years old and realized that such a thing as dance classes existed, I asked for lessons. I begged for lessons. And she felt she had no choice but to say yes. I can still hear the sound of her beautiful Jamaican accent saying, "Okay, wouldn't it be that the other 2 didn't want it and this one wants it, and now I can barely afford it?" But she found a way to put me in class at a dance studio where I was able to pursue my dream, to become a professional dancer. By the time I was 8, my mom was dropping me off at the Jack Lemmon Dance Studio in Toronto every Saturday morning at 8. And I'd take every class, jazz, tap, ballet, everything, till she came to pick me up at 4 in the afternoon. I don't remember any of the other kids staying all day like that, taking all the classes, but I was in. I think it actually made it easier for my mom because on Saturdays, she wouldn't have to deal with me. Saturday was her one day to get all the grocery shopping and everything else done. And there was so much to do that she was always late picking me up. The other kids would say, "Goodbye, Laurie," and teachers would say, "Bye, Laurie." "Goodbye," I'd reply to my teachers, until the last one was locking the door while I waited outside. "Laurie, you gonna be okay? Your mom's gonna come." "Yeah, she'll be here," I said. I had absolute faith that my mom would show up, so I wasn't afraid to wait in the parking lot alone. When everyone was gone, I would still be dancing, literally tap dancing in the parking lot, until I saw her pull up in her little Honda Civic. She always brought a sugar donut for me, so it was worth the wait. Hence my obsession with sugar donuts to this day. In my mind, the donut was a reward, but it was really just so I wouldn't get mad at her for being late. It's interesting looking back on it. Somebody else might have been stressed out that their mom had such a hard time paying for lessons and couldn't afford to arrange her schedule so she wouldn't have to pick them up late. Instead, I found joy in what it was because I was so focused on my dream, and I loved to dance so much. That's all that mattered to me. Sometimes I had to teach the younger kids in that dance school in order to chop some money off the price of my own classes. I wasn't ready to be a teacher. I was just a kid. I wanted to learn, not teach. Plus, I didn't see the value in becoming a teacher or a choreographer. I didn't know the power of what those things could be, but I didn't complain about it like some kids might. I was just so glad that I got to dance every Saturday. That's all that mattered. My passion was bigger than my circumstance. Today, when I work with artists, I remind them that it's their passion that will sustain them. Through rehearsals, through rejections, through the climb, through the hard times. My mom will tell you that I was a happy baby. I was never ever going to be bitter or a diva. These things were not part of my makeup. But I don't see my positive attitude as something that's innate and automatic. I believe, in fact, I know that my positivity, my perseverance, my drive, and my resilience all came from within. It came from my passion, my dream. As long as I was in touch with that dream, that feeling of what I loved and what I wanted, I was good. The power of your passion. Staying in touch with our dreams matter more than most of us ever talk about. My mom had a hard time paying for my dance lessons, even though my parents both worked full-time jobs. My dad, who's passed on now, worked as an electrician, and my mom worked for Xerox of Canada. Working for Xerox was not her dream. They're a fine company and treated her well, but her passion was not for printers. Her passion was for design. My mom wanted to be a fashion designer, but her mom told her that wasn't a real job. It wasn't a real career. She was flat out told that she could not be a designer, so she chose another path. But designing was still her passion. It was still her dream. So she tried along the way to touch that feeling that she knew was ultimately herself. My mom designed and sewed a lot of the clothes my sisters and I wore to school. There were times when she stretched even further and offered some of her designs for sale to friends and acquaintances. She organized little fashion shows in our living room, and I modeled for them. I got my own feel for fashion, for costuming, for patterns, the skills I would later apply to my work for Lady Gaga, for Puffy, for Katy Perry, from her. My mom is retired now, living in Jamaica, but she still designs beach cover-ups and dresses. We're working on opening a shop for her down there. Throughout my career, I've worn her designs, and it brings tears to my eyes because it makes me so proud. It's such an incredible feeling whenever someone asks me, "Who are you wearing?" And I tell them, "My mom designed this." Even though she was deterred, she never let go of her dream. And she promised herself that when she had kids, she was never, ever going to stop them from pursuing their passions. That's why she worked so hard and stretched her budget so far to keep me enrolled in dance classes. But it's also why she let me be my full-on creative self in just about any way I wanted. For example, when I was 7, my mom tells me, because I do not remember this, I kept a big cardboard box in the basement, and I kept choreographing myself in and out of this box. The basement was my dad's cave. It was where he played his records and hung out with his friends. So my dad was like, "What is this box doing in my basement? I'm going to throw this box out." "No, Daddy, Daddy, no," I cried, and my mother didn't let him. Finally, one day he asked me and my mom, "What is it that you want with this box?" My mom took the opportunity to ask me what exactly it was I was doing, going in and out of this box all the time. And I told them, I'm birthing myself into the world. Like I said, I don't remember this. But my mom remembers it vividly because it was a perfect reflection of my sense of play, my sense of creativity. It might have made no sense to anyone but me, but she saw it as something beautiful. Those of you who followed my career may recall that many years later I did something similar in my creative work with Lady Gaga. I'll talk later about the power of that moment, but I bring it up here because, wow, something I didn't even remember, something my mom didn't tell me about until after it had shown up in my creative choices a few decades later, was clearly inside me, waiting to come out. That creative play that might have seemed like silly kid stuff to somebody else was part of my process. To me, that's proof that in the process is the perfection, the power, the greatness. And that needs to be celebrated. Had my mom let my dad throw out the box and said, "You need to go upstairs and study your books," I don't know if I would have ever had enough of that box in me to later create something that would move the world. When I was little, my older sister Debbie had an assignment to choreograph a jazz routine for gym class. She didn't know what to do, so she asked me. Apparently, I jumped right in and came up with a routine for her. When I taught it to her, I yelled at her like choreographers tend to do. Yeah, lunge, snap, ball change, hitchy-coo, ball change. Again, I was so young that I can't recall any of this happening. She told me about it many years later. Even though I was too young to be a teacher or a choreographer, and maybe didn't even know what a choreographer was, I somehow created the language to teach her a routine so well that she could remember it, teach it to others, and get an A. My sister embraced the fact that I loved to dance, and she trusted it, just as my mom did. No one at home stopped me from exploring and expressing, no matter what it was. Simply being allowed to stay in touch with and express my dreams, my inner voice, my creative spirit, allowed me to become what only God knew I was capable of becoming. It's an interesting lesson for parents, I think. Kids tend to be obsessed with certain things. And a lot of times when a child reaches a certain age, the parent is like, "Okay, you've done enough of that. It's time for you to get serious. It's time for you to stop playing in the box." And they stop the child from their childish thing because of their own perception of what it is. Maybe they haven't been trained to know that a child's obsession might be a gift, and that it's okay if it's different, and that it's separate from who they are as a parent. But my mother knew to give way to my passion. And because of what happened to her dreams, there was no way she was going to stop me. She didn't even stop me from my obsession with Barbies. I had the Barbie Dreamboat, the Barbie Dream House, and the Barbie Corvette. I turned my crawl space under the basement stairs into a whole Barbie world. The older I got, the more childish it must have seemed to my family. But no one stopped me from playing with those Barbies. And guess what? That obsession would turn up in my professional life later, too, with Nicki Minaj. I'll share more about that in the pages ahead. As I got older, I utilized this type of creativity from my childhood over and over in my work. Creativity would turn out to be one of my gifts, which would expand as God expanded my circumstances. I found that I could use the ability I developed as a child to imagine what each artist's world would look like. Being a creative person who inspires other artists is a big part of who I am. And that doesn't mean that's who you are or who you should be. Your world doesn't have to look like mine. In fact, it can't look like mine. Each artist, each person has their own world, one that comes from the inside out. That's part of what I want to inspire you to see. This may take time to understand, because society doesn't want us to understand what it is we're missing. Say you're a doctor. You have to ask yourself, if that's not what you, from the inside out, want to be, why are you one? Is it because you think it gives you status in the community? Is it because it's what your parents wanted you to be? Is it because doctors are revered and respected, or that they earn a certain amount of money? Or are you a doctor because, deep down inside, you are a caregiver and a healer, and being a doctor is all about expressing that special gift that God gave you? Entertainers have the ability to evoke joy and faith and inspiration, and to touch people and heal people in a way that makes them a different kind of doctor. That pursuit is just as worthwhile a gift, and if being an entertainer is your gift, I hope you're pursuing it. If you aren't, why not? Is it because you don't think you can earn a living at it? Should that be the sole measure of whether you pursue what's powerful and passionate in you? Sometimes it feels like everyone's trying to be someone else, someone other than who they are from the inside out, because people tell them that that's what they need to do or are supposed to do in order to be successful. I want to argue that there's another way to live. Even if you're far from where you thought you wanted to be when you were young, when you were most creative, when you were most passionate about something that's maybe faded into a distant memory. Whatever that something is, I want to argue that it's important to dig in and touch it again, live it again, embrace it again. Because when we do, life gets better, fuller, richer. I want you to recognize that the passion inside you is a gift from God, which can express itself in all sorts of ways and can give you a level of success and completeness that's greater than anything society's rules and games and false measures of success can ever offer. We'll get to all that in the chapters ahead, I promise. What's miraculous to me is that I wasn't deterred, not early on and not as I got older either. Maybe it's because my mom had my back and let me be who I wanted to be. Or maybe God gave me that gift so I would be able to share it with you now. But by the time the naysayers started to show their faces in my life, my own creativity and my dream and my passion was far too big for any one person to shut it down. Thank God for that. Because I'm telling you, when the dream killers come, they come strong. Don't let them kill your dream. Mr. Christopher was one of the teachers at my dance school, and he was a good teacher when it came to technique and movement. But one day when I was 11 or 12, he looked at me, the only black girl in his ballet class, and told me, "You will never be a ballerina." I was confused and shocked. I was the best dancer in the class. That's not bragging, it's just a fact. We were kids, not professionals, but I treated dance almost like I was a professional from very early on. I worked harder and studied more and practiced longer and took it more seriously than anyone else. I loved the dance. I wanted it. I lived it. I breathed it. I was sure that Mr. Christopher knew that I was the best dancer in the class, too. So I couldn't understand why he would say something like that. "What do you mean?" I asked him. "Your feet are flat," he told me. "Your back is too arched." He wasn't talking about my abilities. He was talking about my body and how what I looked like didn't fit the idea of what a ballerina was supposed to look like, in his mind. It's as if he were saying, "Black girl, what are you trying to be a white swan for?" I couldn't change the fact that I was black. I couldn't help that. I had a more athletic build than the typical white ballerina. My parents were from the West Indies, from Jamaica, the land of Usain Bolt. One day I would appreciate the natural athleticism that came from that DNA, and how my build would allow me to leap higher and move bigger. But Mr. Christopher was saying that I didn't fit the mold of what he thought a ballerina was supposed to look like. Everything in ballet is turning from the inside out. Because of the curve of my back and the shape of my body, my butt would literally be in the way of moving the way a traditional ballerina should be able to move or look. Because of the flatness of my feet, which weren't even done developing yet, I would never achieve the kind of point that the Russian-influenced version of the ballet called for. By the way, my feet eventually developed an arch, and I can point my toes beautifully today. That right there, that one moment in Mr. Christopher's class, could have killed it for me. It could have derailed me. It could have made me give up on my dream. If I had listened to him. I didn't. I ignored him. My dream was bigger than his vision, so my spirit was undeterred. But I know a lot of people do listen. Their dreams get killed just like that. I think teachers sometimes don't realize the incredible power they hold to lift kids up even with a few encouraging words. Why use that power to derail dreams when dreams are what drives us, all of us, to keep moving forward in this so-called real world, where people expected ballet dancers to look a certain way? I'm sure that Mr. Christopher's words seemed accurate to him. I was definitely not a tall, white, Russian-looking girl. But my dream is what drove me. And the dream is what leads to a truth that's much bigger than the limited view of what's already been done, and what everyone already expects a thing to look like. When it comes to creativity and artistry and even industry, what's new is what we eventually see as great. Imitation, repetition, the same old can be beautiful and comfortable and sustainable for a time, sure. But the breakthrough artist, the visionaries, the ones who inspire us to new heights, they're not only doing what's been done, they're doing what's never been done. The great ones don't necessarily look like or act like or sing like or dance like anyone who came before them, because they're uniquely themselves. Shouldn't we be encouraging more of that? I wasn't able to articulate any of this as a kid. I just knew that what Mr. Christopher told me felt wrong. This was my dream, and who was he to say I couldn't do it? What does any other person know about the power of what God gave me? The path God put me on, the plans that God might have for me or for anyone else. God's plans for me were bigger than a man's. Why I had such confidence in myself and in what I wanted to do is beyond me. But I do think it has something to do with the fact that my mom didn't limit my creativity, which meant that my mind was free to imagine more than one older white male teacher saw in me. It's okay for you to be passionately free with your creativity too. I give you permission. But I don't need to be the one to give you permission. God gave it to you when He gave you that creativity in the first place. He gave you those dreams, those desires, those ideas that come into your head that tell you how you can do things differently or make things better or design something you love or dance like nobody's ever danced before. Those are your dreams and your ideas and your passions. And you have every right to express them and pursue them and live and breathe them however you choose. They're your connection to God Himself. When you embrace your creativity, when you dare to dream, when you think about what you want to be, who you could be, who you are at your core, you're touching truth. And that truth will carry you. It will lift you. It will guide you. When it came to my mom, touching her dream even in the smallest of ways lifted her through the tough times she faced. And it still lifts my mom to this day. Just as focusing on my dream, my passion, my truth, lifted me right past Mr. Christopher's limited view of the world and into something bigger than he could have ever imagined. Brown-skinned girls like me. When I was 12 going on 13, my mother took me to see the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater perform at the O'Keefe Center in Toronto. I sat there in awe, watching the most beautiful brown-skinned girls dancing in pointe shoes with the power of all the older white girls in my ballet school. But there was no judgment. At my ballet school, teachers like Mr. Christopher tried to tell me I couldn't do that. But now I saw other girls doing it, and they looked like me. They performed revelations and stack up, which included movements and choreography far beyond any modern ballet I'd ever seen. I was like, Mom, what is that? From that moment, I knew where I wanted to go. The Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater in New York City. I had only ever been to New York once, for a day or so on a field trip. I saw the billboard for a chorus line in Times Square, and it inspired me so much. Not the show, just the billboard. The city was so exciting, but I had no idea what it would mean to live there. I had never even been to the United States other than that one time. I knew I had to graduate high school first, and I knew I'd have to be good in order to get into the Ailey program. I had no idea what it would take to audition, or how we would ever pay for a school like that, or anything else. None of that mattered. The dream was implanted in my heart. I just kept thinking, if all those other girls with skin like mine and bodies like mine can fly on stage like that, why can't I? My dream of becoming a dancer was now augmented with the specific goal of going to Alvin Ailey, and that goal was enough to carry me straight through high school. With the dream in mind, I worked hard, like I always had, and auditioned and attended Claude Watson School for the Arts in Toronto, where my dream and my talents would be treated with as much honor and attention as the academic subjects in which other kids thrived in other types of high schools. I wanted to learn technique. I wanted to be the best dancer I could be. My mother always told me, you can do whatever you want, but seek out the training that will make you the best. Dancing Swan Lake wasn't my dream. Dancing traditional ballet was what led to the evolution of my dream. Wanting to be a dancer led me to wanting to do it all. I wanted to master the technique of ballet, but I love jazz, tap, modern, and eventually hip-hop. When I go to the ballet today, I love it so much. I can't help but think about what a visionary like George Balanchine accomplished in co-founding the New York City Ballet and the School of American Ballet. He moved the art form forward from the purely classical vision he grew up with in St. Petersburg, Russia, and turned it into something neoclassical, starting in the 1930s. Yet I also wonder how much his vision might have grown and changed had he lived beyond 1983. He was working with what he had to work with at the time, based on what he grew up with, and he evolved ballet through his connections to Broadway and the composers of his era. Balanchine made the ballet more modern, but why didn't he continue to make it even more modern and diverse and reflective of the city and the world around him after he found such great success? What would have happened if a girl like me had walked into his studio? Maybe he just never met a Laurieann Gibson or some other young Black girl who was dedicated to the craft with her whole heart and soul. Maybe meeting someone like one of us would have inspired him and taken his vision to a whole new place. Who knows? In all these years, ballet in America, and Canada too, has stuck incredibly close to the vision Balanchine created nearly a century ago. So many producers and theater directors don't want to mess with the kind of success he achieved. They see it as something untouchable, lightning in a bottle that can never be recreated. But artists, true artists, are almost always constantly evolving, constantly becoming more, better, different, bigger as they react to the inspiration from and the influences of the world around them. That's just part of being an artist. In my experience, it's really the artists themselves who stop art from growing and evolving. It's the people who now make money off them. So many times in my career, I've seen art stopped in its tracks, not by the artist, but by those in charge, Usually men with money who want to invest in what is already proven, but they lack the vision and judgment to see that art is meant to be continuously pushed to new levels. I want you to hear what I tell my artist. Don't look in the world for evidence of what you're dreaming to be. What you're dreaming might be entirely new, and you don't want to stop that. I can't help but wonder how many artists have been shut down because of the ripple effects of that kind of institutional oppression. The oppression of dream killers, who do everything in their power to keep things just as they already are. Because of the trickle-down effect of the power we give those in charge of our arts institutions. How many other little girls encountered a Mr. Christopher and were told they couldn't be ballerinas because of what they looked like, no matter how talented they were? How many little black girls gave up on even dreaming of becoming the lead ballerina in a ballet company before Misty Copeland came along and broke that barrier? It's so sad to even think about. How many little girls like me didn't have a mom who took them to see Alvin Ailey to show them a different view, a different interpretation, a different manifestation of the possibility of their dreams? I didn't see something less than Balanchine in Alvin Ailey. I didn't align with any of the snobbery of believing one genre of dance was better than the other. Instead, I saw something bigger in Ailey for me, a different passion, a way of breaking the mold. Just as Balanchine took ballet to a different place, Ailey shattered what Mr. Christopher told me about what dance could be. I'm here to tell you that dream killers, the ones who say you can't, are wrong. There is always another way, a different interpretation, a different dream that they don't understand. And that different perspective might not be something you can go see somewhere, because it hasn't even been created yet. That vision has to come from you. And often, those are the greatest visions of all. On my own. Ideology and traditions and limited views weren't the only things working against my dream as I grew into a young adult in the Toronto suburbs. As I neared the end of high school, my parents went through a divorce. My mom was so overwhelmed by what was happening in her own life that she didn't have the time or energy to help walk me through the process of applying to Alvin Ailey. What little money my mom had to support my dream now seemed to all but vanish too. She had all she could do just to keep herself going, let alone have time to help me with things like filling out an application to a dance school that seemed so far away from anything we'd known in my family. So I applied by myself. I sent an audition tape. I gave it everything I had. I got the recommendations from teachers I trusted and loved. My sisters helped me with some of it, but I knew I had no choice but to figure things out on my own if I wanted to make my dream a reality. I just did it, and I got in. And at the end of the summer of 1989, my big sister Debbie dropped me off at the bus station. And at 17 years old, all on my own, I took a Greyhound bus to New York City. That moment was the beginning of everything. Everything. So much more than I ever imagined possible. And it all started because I dared to dream. And I held on to that dream as I grew.
Faith Gateway is an online community for readers to discover top Christian books and engage with their favorite Christian authors. They bring together content in many different forms, from daily blog posts to book excerpts, daily devotionals, free downloads, videos, giveaways, contests, free online Bible studies, and more. Faith Gateway is brought to you by HarperCollins Christian Publishing, which publishes works from some of the most beloved and most popular Christian authors in the world today. Faith Gateway provides unique opportunities to connect with those authors and their books as you seek answers to your biggest spiritual questions. Whether you are exploring Christianity or involved in full-time Christian ministry, Faith Gateway has the best resources to meet you where you are today and help you get to the next level in your spiritual journey. Faith Gateway is giving Listen Here listeners 15% off their first order with promo code LISTEN. Visit faithgateway.com to shop the store, sign up for daily devotionals, or join the latest free online Bible study. That's faithgateway.com and promo code LISTEN to receive 15% off your first order. Thank you for spending time with us, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen Here. Check back next week for more audiobook samples and maybe a special guest or two. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us on Instagram and TikTok at Listen Here Podcast. Visit our website, listenhearepodcast.com, for more information or to find the books we've talked about. See you next week.